Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Conscience and you are listening to the Conscience Hip Hop Podcast, and I have another special guest with me today for episode 3. Joined with me today in my little home studio is my boy, AB. What's going on, man?
What's good? Hey, thank you for having me on today. Definitely grateful to be on this podcast. I like what I've heard so far with the previous episodes, so definitely excited to be with you today, Conscience. For sure.
Word. So let's just kick into it right away, man. Who are you? Where are you from? And where you at?
Yes, sir. So, like you said, my name is AB. My government name is Austin Burton. So you kind of get where AB comes from. Just simply my initials. It was a nickname that people called me growing up. So I just kind of decided to roll with that. From Kilgore, Texas, a little spot, and it's like deep East Texas, like 30 minutes away from Shreveport. So it's like on the eastern border of Texas. Yeah, I was born out there, 1993. And so basically where I'm at currently is Arizona. Been out here for almost 3 years. It's definitely been a great journey out here so far. I never see myself, moving outside of Texas. So being out here has definitely been a journey and a blessing at the same time.
Dope, man. So I'm just going to kind of poke on a couple things you touched on in there. So yeah. Obviously you're from Texas. You said your name's AB. Has AB always been your name? If not, what are some of the monikers you go by or have gone by in the past?
All right, yeah, great question. So I got a bunch of aliases that, like people inside my group call me. Some people just call me Burton. Some people call me this name called Burkova. I don't know where they got it from, but they call me that. But like the ones that I'm most known from is the AB or Austin. Some people know me by Wombat because me and my friend Steve and Val, we did this project called Bearded Mafia, and we both had aliases. His was Bearded Bandit, mine was Wombat. It was just kind of a funny thing we was doing.
Like a Batman and Robin.
Yeah, type thing. Yeah. So like it was just a real fun project we did. And so yeah, I mean, when it comes to aliases, I mean, there's a chock full of them that I have, but the main ones, of course, is the AB. That's what most people know me by, or like I said, my government name as well. But yeah, definitely a long list of them.
Word.
For sure.
That's what's up, man. And so the follow-up to that is like when you came to Arizona, what was the reason for that? Like, why did you make the transition? What did it happen very quick, suddenly,
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, great question. Yeah, it definitely happened suddenly, like very quick, because like I said, I never see myself moving outside of Texas. So basically what brought me out here in the first place was, so I was doing, hip hop music back in Texas since 2011. And so basically in that journey, I met who I know, y'all know as Good News Gang. But at that time I wasn't, rapping with them, but pretty much basically as I, built a relationship with them, they all moved out here to help, well, not a church plant, but they help like with college ministry out here. Mm-hmm. And pretty much I was doing college ministry with them as well back in East Texas. Though I didn't rap with them, I'd still do ministry with them. Yeah. And so basically they all moved out here. And then Steve, the guy I mentioned earlier, he moved down here as well, but then he moved back to Texas. And when he moved back to Texas, me and him linked up, and we already knew each other, but that's when we like started like really linking up, making music, and that's when we made Bearded Mafia. And so after we made Bearded Mafia, he was like, hey man, I'm gonna have to move back to Texas and go back with the fellas. We'd love for you to come and join us, come join Good News Gang. You can come help us do college ministry out there.
This was in Texas?
Well, we was in Texas at the time.
Gotcha.
And so
he asked you to come out to Arizona.
Right, yeah. He asked me to come to Arizona, that's right, yeah. And so basically I prayed on it, man. And yeah, pretty much got up and left like literally probably 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it was definitely all of a sudden, didn't see it coming at all. I mean,
what'd your parents think about it?
I mean, they was a little bit, you know, shaken about it. Definitely my mom, you know how moms are. But like at the same time,
pack you a lunch.
Yeah, pack me a lunch, right? But yeah, it was definitely hard to leave them, you know, because I mean I was living with them all the way up to that point, and so. But yeah, I mean, they was all for it though, because they was like, you know what, you know, you're getting older, it's time to go explore new things, and so it was bittersweet. So you know, it had its hard moments, but at the same time, they was, you know, all for it as well.
Got you. Now, how old were you when you went to Arizona?
I believe so. I'm 23 now, so I had to have been. I believe I was 20 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so you've been out here for roughly 3 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, you were kind of getting into your adulthood.
Right.
And I think, you know, a lot of cats, you know, when it comes to either going to college or getting out of high school and stuff, you start thinking about, like, seeing the world, so to speak, and just kind of getting out there and doing your own thing. So, you know, you're kind of at this young age, you know, discovering new things about yourself and being a man and all this jazz. And so you come out to Arizona, you're working with the church plant, you got a group of cats. How many of it was you? You know, who'd you live with? Where were you? Like, what'd you do when you got here?
Yeah, for sure. So when I moved out here, we all lived in this group house. So this was a crazy thing. Like the church that we was going to, is at the time it was called Christ Community Church. It's now called Creation Church. It's in Chandler, Arizona. But they had like a group home that they own. It's called a parsonage, which really is for the pastor to live in, because the denomination that it was part of, I believe it was a Christian Reformed Church of America, I believe. I might have it wrong. I'm not sure.
It's like an organization.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So like a popular theme in that organization was they always had parsonages for the pastor.
Gotcha.
But the pastor, he did live there for a little bit, and then he moved out. That way it could become a group home type thing. And so it was crazy. When I first moved to that house, it was 1, 2, and then that's 5. I believe there was 7 of us. 7 or 8 of us that all lived in one house.
Jeez.
And so, you know,
Brady bunch.
Yeah, pretty much. You know what I'm saying? The Brady bunch. Yeah. Jeez. It was like, yeah, it was crazy. It was pretty much 2 of us to a room.
So I mean, that's basically the equivalent of like, almost like a Christian, like, I didn't want to say sorority. What do they
sorority,
call, what do they call the dudes one?
It's
like a chapter?
Yeah, something like that. I can't even remember what it's called.
So basically like a chapter of brothers for college, so to speak.
Right,
you guys had your own dorm, basically.
Pretty much.
Your own house situation set up. So, okay, so that kind of draws me to another question that maybe you can touch on lightly about your past and then even up to now. So, you know, I know personally that like the guys you moved in and stuff with were all rappers or involved in hip hop culture to some extent. But if we kind of rewind a little bit, what were some of your influences growing up musically in Texas? And did that change at all when you came here? And talk to us a little bit about like your local circle of cats that you grew up with that did hip hop. Who are your influences outside of that, in that circle, and then even now? Yeah,
for sure. So my first introduction, so surprisingly growing up when I was little, I was a big like rock and roll fan. Like I was a big Metallica fan, Disturbed fan. I like both of those bands a lot. I mean,
Let the Bodies Hit the Floor.
Yeah, Let the Bodies Hit the Floor. Yeah.
That was your jam in the shower.
Yeah. So when I first got introduced to hip hop, so my biological dad used to come pick me up when I was like probably about 10 years old or somewhere around there. And every time he would pick me up, he would either have 1 or 2 CDs, 1 of 2 CDs. He would either have Outkast Stank on You, or he would have, I forget which one, it was an Eminem CD.
Marshall Mathers, Infinite.
I can't even remember.
Shady LP.
It was probably one of those, I'm sure. I can't even remember what it was.
Curtain Call.
There's so many of them. That dude has so much music, but yeah, pretty much. So that's like my first introduction to hip hop, and so like I fell in love with it though. You know, I was a big Eminem fan, a big 3 Stacks fan, and so as I got older, I started just listening to hip hop. Started listening to all of Eminem. Like he became like a big influence as far as like just my love for hip hop, pretty much. I mean, he's one of the, if not the greatest to do it. And so, of course, you're gonna be influenced by him when you listen to him. But but as I grow up, like I started getting introduced by my homies that I lived with before Christ. They pretty much introduced me to a bunch of like underground Texas hip hop artists, like cats like Zero, Trey. Of course, you got, you know, DJ Screw, Pimp C, Bun B, Paul Wall. You know, the list just keeps going on. And so I kind of get into the like the Texas hip hop scene as well. And so like Zero, he was a huge influence, like because he just spoke real in his records. Right. And that's kind of like where my lane is, kind of like just being real, being transparent. And so that's what I liked about, you know, Zero was, and even Eminem. I mean, Eminem was kind of overly transparent. You know, he kind of got on some crazy stuff on a lot of his tracks, but that's just one thing I liked about it. Like, they was just real, they was raw and uncut. And but yeah, and then as far as like when I started doing hip hop music, you know, Good News Gang, that like before I joined Good News Gang, there was a huge influence. My friend Steven, that, you know, I keep talking about, he influenced me a lot. He I guess you could almost say discipled me when it came to hip hop. You know, he taught me, he was the first one to teach me like what 16 bars is, how to write a bar, like what the bar format looks like. Because before that, you know, when I would write a song, it's just like sentences after sentences after sentences, looking like a daggum like a school write, something like that. And so yeah, like all them cats, you know, Good News Gang definitely influenced me. At the time, I was doing music with a friend of mine named Blaze, and that's who. So I was doing college ministry with, you know, Good News Gang and them, and it was called Real Talk. Real Talk is actually out here in Arizona now as well. But I was doing music with my friend named Blaze, and we had a ministry called ATF Ministries, which stood for Activate Total Faith. And so yeah, that was kind of like what influenced me musically, was like, just in the past was those two primarily, Outkast, Eminem, and then as I, you know, became Christian, and then you got your main cast like Lecrae, you know, all those guys, 116. My favorite rapper was probably Trip Lee when I first like got introduced to Christian hip hop.
Probably because of his grit and his voice.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably was. I did like just kind of related to his sound because he is from Texas. It's funny. Just a little side note. I actually listen. I've heard Lecrae before I was a Christian. And when I heard him, I was like, man, this dude's whack. He's, you know, rapping about Jesus and stuff. And so, and ironically, you know, the Lord saved my tail, and you know, I had fully, you know, appreciated what he was talking about. And D1 was another guy that I actually listened to D1 on BET one time. He had a video called One Man Army on there. And I actually listened to that before I was a Christian as well. That was pretty dope. Yeah,
that's what's up, man. You know, I like to describe Texas rap as kind of like, it's really interesting because a lot of cats from the South are heavily influenced by East Coast rap.
Yeah, I agree.
And so some of it, and even a lot of it, like, even if it's not the most lyrical, it's got like a poetry to it that's very unique to the times. And so like the stuff you would hear in Texas is nothing like what you'd hear in like Atlanta.
Right,
Stuff
exactly.
in Atlanta wouldn't be anything like you hear in Alabama. Like New Orleans had its own bounce. And so like I like to refer to Texas specifically as kind of like a Southern comfort, or like or like I call it like back porch soul. Like it's gonna have a lot of like musical soul influence, but it's gonna have like the hood dreams bounce, kind of like it has the ballin' elements to it, where you know it's got the dreamers in there, you know, talking about being ambitious and trying to get off the, you know, stoop and stuff like that. So so that kind of leads me into my next question here, just kind of piggybacking off that real quick. So now that you have all these different influences that you brought up to us, describe your personality and sound to someone who's never heard your music before. If you could just kind of give them a summary of how your influences have shaped your personality when you pick up a mic and rap.
Sure. Yeah, you kind of actually hit the nail on the head, because you said a lot of the Southern guys get influences from the East Coast. And I would say my music kind of falls in line with that as well. Like, it has that real grittiness, you know, a lot of drums and type, you know, things like that. But I try to stay lyrical as well, which, you know, of course, hip hop was birthed in New York on the East Coast. And so like I think a lot of my influences also pushed me, because I mean 3 Stacks and Eminem, both of those guys are lyrical, you know, and so out the wazoo. And so like that's the thing as well, just from that, just try to not copy that, of course, but just be an influence from it, you know. And so I think that's kind of how my sound is as well. It's like that southern feel, that southern comfort, if you will, with trying to be as well, be lyrical, you know. That way I'm not hiding behind the beat, you know. I don't want to hide behind a great beat without, you know, no substance. And so that's what I try to make sure I don't do. And so I mean, and you'll see my personality in my music as well. I'm a real goofy guy a lot of times. You know, you help mix and master my project Abnormal, and so you've seen plenty of that, I'm sure. Yeah. And so like I just like to be myself, you know, and that's what I like to promote in my music, is like, you know, be who you are. Don't and that's one of the reasons why I'm so transparent in my music is because, like, I think for so long, like in hip hop, you see all this, you know, glamorous fake life type things. Yeah, you may have all those you know, materialistic things, you know, if it's cars, money, whatever it may be. You may actually have those things, you know, some of the rappers that we see. I'm not saying they don't, but what I am saying is, even though they have those things, they still have struggles, I guarantee you. Yeah. And so and that's what I try to paint in my music, is like the real life struggles of everyday life, pretty much.
Well, that's a really good kind of follow-up into my next question. Yeah. You know, tell us a little bit about your testimony coming to the Lord, and how that impacted your music. Like, kind of give us an age, you know, because we found out you were in Texas. Yeah. You know, you moved to Arizona. Where do you believe God saved you? And then where were you in the music when that happened?
Certainly. And so basically I would say about mid 2010, 2011 is around the time you know, the Lord saved my life, because I mean, I grew up in the Bible Belt, so everybody thinks they're a Christian out there. And so
well, how old were you as well?
I was I'd say about 17 when I like really like started following the Lord.
Basically 3 years prior to you even considering moving out here.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. About 3 years, I'd say. That sounds about right. And so basically how I came to the Lord, like I said, I grew up going to church here and there, said a little sinner's prayer, got baptized in front of my family, you know, did all these things. And so, but I don't think I like ever really had a relationship with the Lord. And so because, you know, like, you know your father, like your earthly father, you know, because you spend time with him, right? Or mother, if you didn't have the father there, you know, you get my point pretty much. And so same way with God, like, how can I say I know God but never spend time with him, which was the case growing up. I really never did. Yeah. And if I was spending time with God, it's about praying about my selfish ambitions, you know. And so basically, but how I came to the Lord was you know, I used to fight with depression a lot growing up. And it really came out. So I was dating this girl, put all my eggs in one basket. I was like, you know what? When I finish high school, I want to marry this girl. She was my first love, all this, you know, the whole nine with it. And, and so basically, this the testimony in a nutshell, she pretty much, like, she left me for another dude, which, like we was always off and on. We'd break up, you know, but then this was different. Right, exactly. This was different. This was like yo, I'm really done. I'm going. I'm moving on. And so when that happened to me, like I said, all my eggs were in this one basket, and it's almost like, if you want to call it an idol, it's like your idol just lets you down, right? Right. And so once that happened, I had a point in life where I was like, dang, like, what do I have to live for now? Because the other thing I had a big love for was football. And football was pretty much done at that time as well. And mind you, I had no idea I'd be doing hip-hop music. Like, I never seen myself being a rapper growing up. I liked hip-hop music, but I never seen myself being a rapper. Like, we would freestyle here and there. That's just what we do in Texas. Yeah. And I definitely by no means was, you know, the best freestylist at all.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I wasn't that guy that was going to be like, oh yeah, he's going to be a hip hop artist.
Just a fun thing to do.
Yeah, just a fun thing to
Gotcha.
do. You know, we around the lunch table. You know, somebody hit the grinded beat. You know, and so
everybody would jump in.
exactly. And so, but yeah, so pretty much when that happened, like I just hit this wall. And I started having thoughts of like suicide and stuff like that. Like my dad had this gun, and like you know, I knew where it was and all that stuff. And I never like pulled out the gun and like, you know, put it to my head or anything like that. Praise God. But I always had thoughts, and like thoughts.
Walk yourself through the process.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah, walk it in your head.
Yeah,
you know, like the whole thing. Like
what would
even
people
to the
think about me?
exactly. Like even to the point of like, dang, what's my family gonna think? How's my mom gonna feel? How's my brothers, my dad gonna feel? And so during that process, I reached out to this guy that I knew I met him during football. He was our like booster club president.
Yeah.
And he was just a big influence in our whole community in the city of Kilgore. And his name was Tim Capps. And I reached out to him during this time, and I was like, he attended a local church, and so I knew he was a Christian and stuff. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey man, I'm going through it right now. I'm young, and I'm just going through some deep stuff right now. I don't know where I'm going in life.
Sure.
So he was like, hey man, let's grab some coffee. And so grabbed some coffee with him, linked up, kind of just told him who I was, and so, like we met a couple times prior to that, so he knew who I was, but he didn't know me like that. And so pretty much we got some coffee, and he invited me to their like youth ministry that they had at the church called Cornerstone. That's what it's called, Cornerstone Fellowship.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I remember one day I went to the youth. Thought it was dope, but I was still kind of, I wasn't all the way in though at that time, because I was like, you know what, I'll come to your youth event on Wednesday, but I want my weekends though, you know. And I'll never go to church like on Sundays or anything like that. Well, like finally one day I did go to church on Sunday, and I met this other guy named Joe McDaniel. And this is like when the discipleship, like who knows when the Lord actually like transformed my heart. Yeah. Because that could have happened anywhere in that whole little thing right there.
Right, sure.
But when I met this guy named Joe McDaniel, and Tim Capps, of course, that's like when the discipleship process actually happened. And Joe McDaniel showed me like a whole thing I never heard of. Like I said, the Bible Belt, yeah, everybody's a Christian, but he showed me like what it really meant to walk this thing out. Like he had me over for dinner every night. He brought me into his life. He poured into me. Like, mind you, he has his own family at this time as well. And so, you know, he just like walked every day with me, hit me up, he showed me the script. We would go through this like discipleship program called Equipping the Saints. And so pretty much just walking me through that, like, and it just pretty much went through the elementary things. It gets deeper because like it's a big program, right? But it started off like the elementary things, like what is it to make a disciple? What is a disciple? What did Jesus command us to do? Who is Jesus? You know, and so like really seeing like this real, you know, thing called Christ, like God, Christianity, like not this like church going religion type thing. It's like a real relationship, seeing who God really is. And so, I mean, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And from there, like, the Lord's been pulling me through it, you know what I'm saying? And so, dope. Yeah. That's really interesting, man. Yeah. Now, I kind of, in my mind, there's two kind of distinct areas that I want to kind of get a little more answer from you on. Certainly. One is, so clearly this chick devastated you. Certainly. That left you. Was there anything else going on in your life that now looking back you would say like, man, this was definitely keeping me from the idea that I'm a sinner, like I have sin that I'm gonna own up to one day and get hell for, or like, you know, the things that you know now totally kept you from the idea of God in a life of surrender and you know, needing a savior, basically. Right. What were some of the biggest deterrents of that? Yeah, basically I grew up with a bunch of my homies as well. I lived in this community, or a neighborhood, I guess you'd say, called Little Mexico. And so like I grew up with like Bloods and stuff, like dudes that was really living that life. And so like they influenced me a lot as well. Like I wanted to be like them. I wanted to roll with them. I wanted to run with them. So even outside of this, the whole girl situation, I had that as well. And just pretty much, like, I grew up, like, with a low self-esteem, like, and so because my biological dad, he left 3 weeks before I was born, pretty much. Now, mind you, I did have a stepfather that stepped in like 6 months into when I was born, and he raised me as his own, and I'm definitely thankful for that. Like, he was a great father figure, raised me great, but at the same time, growing up, I still had those scars. Like, dang, my father didn't want me.
Yeah.
And so with that, I always struggled with thoughts like, I'll never amount to anything, I won't ever be anything good. And so yeah, I mean, like, I had that, like, in my heart as well too.
Sure.
Like, during that whole time, and that's kind of like I said, all my eggs were in one basket. Like, because outside of football, outside of that girl, I didn't see nothing else. Like, if that wasn't going to happen, I'm like, well, dang, I don't know what I'm going to do in life.
Yeah.
And so, but as,
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say as well, like, a funny story also. So a friend of mine named, and this is actually how I met the guys in Good News Gang. I was in high school still, and my friend who knew the guys in Good News Gang, before they was even called Good News Gang, they just had a house. It was a Real Talk house, like the college ministry I'm talking about. They all lived in a house out in Texas, kind of similar to what we was doing out here.
Yeah.
But Ian introduced me to them. And it was all Christians, and so I like chop it up with them because Ian would go over there and get his hair cut by Robbie.
Right.
Robbie used to cut hair. I mean, he still does, but he used to like cut hair for everybody back in the day.
Right.
And so Ian would go get his hair cut with him, and I would go with him because Ian was a great friend of mine I had at the time.
Yeah.
And so Ian knew about Christianity as well because his brother Jeremy was part of Real Talk as well, and Jeremy would tell Ian things. And so when I'd hang out with Ian used to like, and this is just point to the thing, a whole thing about like times when I think about the Lord, like, you know, things that were like weighty on my heart.
Yeah.
He would like tell me, Ian would tell me about things that he learned. He was like, man, I remember one time we was going over to his house to stay the night, and on our way to his house, he's like, man, you know, Austin, you know, like, if we die right now, we're going to go to hell, bro, like, because we don't know Jesus. And mind you, my whole time living, like, I went to church, I was like, you know, I thought, like, I'm good to go. You know, I got my hole punched.
Something about that tugged at you.
Right, exactly. And so, I kid you not, the moment we walked in his house, I was so convicted, I went to his room and prayed. And I was like, God, I hope I make it to heaven. I hope you save me, you know. And so, because I was just, you know, terrified of that, and so of that truth, you know. And so yeah, I mean, basically, just those are the kind of things as well that kind of pointed me towards the Lord, and also the things that kind of kept me from the Lord. Like, I wanted to be a gangster, I wanted to be hard, I wanted to be a blood, I wanted to be all these things. And mind you, again, hip-hop culture, you know, influenced a bunch of that, you know, because that's what it was, you know. Hip-hop promotes, look, you know, don't be no punk, get women, you know, get money, and so and the list goes on. And so those were the kind of things that like kept me from the idea of being a Christian as well, because in my mind I thought being a Christian was being soft, you know, being a punk, right? Because like I would see like Christian boys like in high school and stuff, and I'm like, man, those guys look like they're soft and stuff. Like, that's not what I know. Right.
And yeah, and I mean, if you even look at the life of Jesus Christ, like people thought he was super soft.
Oh yeah.
But you know, he had his moments.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He had his moments where it wasn't a game.
Oh
so,
yeah.
But and in all of who he was a leader. He was.
Yep.
He was a perfect expression of the gospel. He was sacrificial. I mean, a real man.
And that's what I was
a real man and fully God.
Yeah.
So like, it goes to show you things aren't always what they seem.
Yeah.
And in most cases, they're not what you thought they were. And you know, it's interesting because, you know, as I listen to your testimony, one thing that really sticks out to me is like, when you're gripped with the weight of hell being a reality.
Yeah.
Like, it's terrifying.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like, when I think about life in general, and even my testimony, like, that was one of the most gripping things ever. It's like, one day, I used to think like heaven and hell, like, okay, like, cool, like, I would say I believed in them, but like, just there was no real weight in my heart as far as like how my thinking was towards it. They were just kind of these things. But if you think about it, like eternity lies in two realms, like heaven and hell when you die. And when you look at the idea of eternity, that is so much obviously more than this life.
Right.
Yeah, and so forever. Like when I think about dudes who don't really take heed to the idea of hell, it just blows my mind, because I'm like, yo, how could you do, especially dudes who are like so gung-ho morally about like doing something powerful for the world and making change in the world and like being this great person, because it's like, yo, you might have like 20 to 100 years or something, Lord willing, and what is it all for? Like what, like, how can people go through their lives knowing that like there could be an end is coming? We know people die, but what happens when you leave is a big deal. And the fact that people can just kind of put that behind them and say, you know what, no, like I'm just gonna do my best, do good in this world, and change myself and change the people around me, and then hope that and then one, hope that there is an eternity, and then two, hope that whoever governs that likes what I've done, and will put me in. Like, just the idea of not searching that out and like really getting some answers on that just blows my mind. Like, that is the most important thing that a kid or a baby or a father or an old man could ever wrestle with, is this eternity. Like, why we're here is a huge question, and where we're going is an even huger question. And if you can't answer those, you gotta be really, you know, and that's why I think theology is huge here, because do you believe that God calls people? Like, when you see people change, like you can just see it, like, yo, like for some dumb reason, I never carried a weight with the idea of an eternity, or like my need for a savior, or sin, or the spiritual principalities, you know, none of that stuff even really registered with me at the heart level. But when it did, it was like, yo, what? I wasn't even high on drugs. But I was acting like I was high on drugs because I did not see this and feel the weight of this, and it's so important. So just hearing your testimony, it just makes me think about like, yo, like God has to rescue people because they just for sin is deep. Like it just has a bind on somebody that we cannot break without the power of God and the love and compassion and mercy of God to even act on that, because we don't even deserve that. So I mean, dude, the testimony is amazing that I'm hearing from you. It's good to hear your heart on that. Guys, I'm just gonna preface real quick, if that's even a word. I'm just gonna lay it out here. This is probably going to be a little bit of a lengthy interview. I want you guys to hear the story about AB and where he's at, and this is important. You know, I really think that the testimony is such a powerful thing, and this might be one of those podcasts, you know, you revisit a couple times in the week. Some of you will be convicted and just want to listen through the whole thing. You got to soak it all up in one listen, and we definitely appreciate that. But, you know, this is weighty, you know, and this is a story that in most cases can't be told overnight, but we're going to try and package it as best as we can to deliver something concise that will definitely impact change in your life with the gospel, influence your life in its fullness, and, you know, bring some fruit to you guys and anyone who even dares to pick this up and give it the time of day. So we appreciate your guys' patience riding with us through this interview. I think AB definitely needs to be heard. Also, you know, I just want to tell you guys, I know AB personally. I met AB a couple years back, you know. Yo, so I bet you're just sitting there tight like, yo, where did the podcast just go? Well, guys, like I said, this interview is so lengthy. I've broken it into 3 parts for you, so make sure you check out part 2 and part 3 as a follow-up to this, so you can see what more AB had to talk about as far as his upcoming projects and thoughts on the pulse of hip-hop right now. It's something you definitely don't want to miss. Check out part 2 on the video.